Greetings, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for participating in this roundtable discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. It's going to be an exciting afternoon, talking about something that, the one thing about social enterprise and social impact and social services and the social sector generally, is that it's close to everybody's heart. It is. It's something that everybody is passionate about. That's just the way it is. We all innately want to do good, and we want to make a difference. I honestly believe that. And we want to make this place that we live and we share such that everyone can have a place and everyone can be happy and everyone can be comfortable. I think that's an innate thing from all of us as human beings, So we're in for exciting time this afternoon. Give us 2 minutes and we're going to get going, and then we'll keep it very, very tight and interactive thereafter. All right. Again, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you like this. And the room so far has some 80 plus persons, and we're excited about that, and we're expecting lots more. When we invited persons to register for this session, the response really was overwhelming, and no doubt, because like I said before, it's an area close to lots of our hearts, you know what I mean? That's the truth. So we're going to start this afternoon by having some quick remarks from our CEO. Hold on a second. I see somebody trying to tell me something. Okay. Oh yes, I've just been reminded that there is a poll that's going to be launched because we need to see exactly who is in the room. So that's going to happen right now, I believe. And while that is happening, I want to invite you to, that's the poll on your screen. Very, very simple poll. What's that? 3 questions. We just want to know who you are, and do you operate a social enterprise or not? And which sector does your social enterprise contribute the greatest value in? That's all. Very, very simple. So let me give you 1 minute to do that.
Oh, Aralo, you select the answers because I press in on them and I don't say anything.
Oh no, sorry. As a co-host, you can't participate. Sorry, Knife.
Okay. Oh, you already know everything, but we already found that thing.
We know exactly. We know everything about you. We don't need to know nothing else from the poll. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Knife, who is disturbing our flow. And as he does, that's what he does. But not to worry, it's all good. All right, we're gonna proceed while the poll is still running. I'm gonna invite our CEO, Ms. Valerie Vieira, to bring us some, quick opening remarks and just to share her perspective on the activity. Ms. V, your time.
Thank you, Harry. And it's going to be really quick because I'm really excited about hearing from the panelists. And just to say that we have thought through it in JBDC, and we know that there's a concept that efficiency and sustainability don't live in the same world with social entrepreneurship, and that we need to address quite quickly, and that donations and grants are the lifeblood of social entrepreneurship, and that this will continue to be available in abundance. We all know that that is not going to be the state of play continuing from now. And it is our hope that we are, as partners on a mission, going to assist in transforming, energizing, and stimulating development in the sector. And this panel, I know we're in for a treat. It's a rich fountain of information, but I think most importantly, experience. And that the experience and the sources are both local and international because we're operating in the global space. And we have panelists who have operated outside of a book. They have been in the belly and the heart of things. So they come to us with real information. So our expectations is for the needle to start moving in the right direction so that our organizations can be successful businesses even whilst they're doing social good. So I'm excited and I'm just waiting and raring to hear from all the panelists. And I know that all of us are going to benefit from this experience. And I just want to inform that we have people internationally participating as well. I don't know if Harry knows that, but we have people who have registered from other countries, not Jamaica.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yes, I'm very excited about that the word is going far and wide. So looking forward to excitement. JBDC is an excitement type of organization, but we're also accustomed to success and we just love it. So we know we're starting on a journey that is going to really see some serious and wonderful, impactful programs and enterprises coming up to help in the social development whilst we earn money to make sure that can happen. So look forward to great things this afternoon, tomorrow, and the day after, and many years after that. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Ms. V. The polls are closed, and from what we have, the results that we have is that we have no surprise. I don't know, Naif and Prof, we need to talk. Always when we have these sessions, our females far outnumber our male in the room. So we have 72% of the room being female.
Wow.
Almost 60% of you in the room have and operate a social enterprise. And the areas of social enterprise impact, it seems to be, our greatest value rather, seems to be relatively spread. There's social, there's environmental, there's cultural, there's education, there's health. So nice room, nice. I'm happy about that. An event like this today and certainly for the next 3 days is not possible without our sponsors. And this time around, we have been so excited and so blessed to have on board with us two sponsors that we believe that they're more than sponsors, they're partners, and they have shown their commitment in several ways to the development of the MSME sector, tangible commitment. Our first major sponsor, or title sponsor, is the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And we have, just to bring some brief remarks, this is Marlene Street Forest, who is the Managing Director of JSC, to share with us. Marlene, are you up and ready? I know I saw you enter the room. All right. until we figure out what's going on. Hey, Marlene, you're here?
Yes, the host was not allowing me to unmute my phone.
Okay.
So I'm excited to be here, as a matter of fact. Mr. Moderator, Harold Davis, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Valerie Vera, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Michael Willisey, VP Corporate and Commercial Banking, Sagicor Bank, and fellow sponsor, members of the round table, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Jamaica Stock Exchange is pleased that the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, through the IDBJC project, Innovating Social Sector Financing, was able to come on board as a sponsor for this important program, which includes the JBDC's grant proposal writing workshop for social enterprises. The JSEIDB is centered on using a social stock exchange, which is the JSSE, as a platform for raising financing, enhancing the management skills of social sector organization, and to improve communication of results to donors and investors. Now, this is seen as an important part of our project delivery, as traditionally, social sector organizations in Jamaica have been constrained from financing their social projects or entities, largely arising from their business management or project management skill or lack thereof. And you know, we are living in unprecedented times where social demand are predicted to be even greater than in the past. And it is therefore stands to reason that our social enterprises will have greater challenges in raising funds from a constricted basket of funds. You know, everyone is trying to outdo the other. So I think we have to put people in the position to ensure that great projects will rise to the top and get the funding it deserves because it was well represented. The JC, through the JSSE, and that's the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, considers the JBDC as a strategic partner as we seek to achieve the same objectives. We have worked together in the past, and we know that our objectives are aligned. The objectives of the JSSE and the JBDC of working towards improving the capability of social enterprises to access financing is clearly aligned, as I said before. We anticipate that the expected output of this program, that of improving the capacity of these SSOs, will be realized. We're actually honored to be a part of this event and wish the JBDC success with the remainder of the activities and all the participants a healthy return on their investment. You know, I had to end with that. All the best in this program, which we believe will assist our SSOs in elevating and improving themselves so as to allow for social impact investment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Streetforest. And like I said, a long-term partner of the JBDC. Thank you so much for your support on this one.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. Next, we have another. The only thing is that the next speaker doesn't have an office at JBDC, but we're working on that part. and I speak of Mr. Michael Willisey, who is the VP for Corporate and Commercial Banking, SME, Business Banking, and Retail Banking, the gentleman with the longest title ever for the Sagicor Bank. Mike, I want to thank you upfront for the support of the MSMEs and JBDC in particular, and certainly the support for this program. And I invite you to say a couple of words.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, certainly, you know, the JBDC Sagicor family, and that will be concretized or shown publicly in a few, less than 2 months. But let me start by bringing greetings to Minister Floyd Green, Valerie Vera, CEO of Jamaica Business Development Corporation, and her team, which I think is the one of the greatest team I've seen in terms of their ability to create and become and sort of you know, when I listened to this, I said, how did we come up in sponsoring social enterprise? But it had to take JBDC to do that. My fellow sponsors, I want to say greetings to you as well, and my Sagicor Bank team and specially invited guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Now, it's an honor to be here as we officially kickstart the Jamaica Business Development Corporation Social Return on Investment Virtual Roundtable and Grant Fund Proposal Writing for Social Enterprises. Again, I congratulate the JBDC for its continued vision in executing such an initiative geared towards assisting members of the micro, small, medium-sized enterprise sector to grow their organization in the interest of improving society. Sagicor Bank is pleased to partner with the JBDC on this initiative as we work towards or together to improve our country. The difference between Sagicor Bank and certainly the social entrepreneurs is that we maximize shareholders' value, which is good because it helps society in the long run. However, for social enterprises, I also congratulate those entrepreneurs because their first obligation is really to enhance and lift society's standard, and I congratulate you on that. Now, over the few years, Jamaica has witnessed an increase in social businesses, which have tremendously contributed to the sustainable development of the nation at the local and national level. This growing facet of the MSME sector has addressed some of the nation's most pressing issues and have worked to create an inclusive society for all groups. With the unique ability to earn while responding directly to community, cultural, and environmental needs, the sector has increased opportunities for all Jamaicans and has boosted the country's social value. Social entrepreneurs, therefore, serve a critical role in the transformation of our nation and ensuring that we achieve and maintain sustainable development for years to come. Sagicor Bank wants to encourage its creativity and the entrepreneurial spirit behind it. Over the past few years, Sagicor Bank has embarked on a drive within the SME sector to foster greater relationship with participants and forge meaningful partnerships that will prove beneficial to the SME clients. This approach, we believe, has borne fruit and has paved the way for innovative solutions within the financial sector that are specific to assisting our MSME clients. A key segment of the MSME sector includes social enterprises. As we delve into the matter of capitalizing on funding opportunities for social businesses, I invite all participants to share openly and grasp all you can, and remember that this forum is as informative for us as it will be for you. I must congratulate the JBDC for putting on a forum and bringing all the stakeholders to the table as we ideate and develop strategies to propel the sector even further. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the conference. Do enjoy the proceedings, which will definitely be very great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate your support and your continued partnership with JBDC. And I was serious about the office space at JBDC. It's not a problem. All right, so let's jump into our discussion, our roundtable discussion. And I want to, first of all, just kind of put our discussion in context a little bit, and you know, reasons why we're doing this. And the first thing I want to do is give a definition as to what a social enterprise is. A social enterprise or social business is defined as a business that has specific social objectives that serve its primary purpose. Social enterprises seek to maximize profits while maximizing benefits to society and the environment. Profits are primarily used to fund social programs. The definition goes on to say social enterprises are businesses created to further a social purpose in a financially sustainable way. And the last comment in terms of definitions is that they, by definition, do not or should not depend on philanthropy, but sustain themselves, find ways to sustain themselves over the long term. That said, it's not an easy road. It's not easy to do good as your mission. In fact, some may argue that it might be even easier just to do well. Yeah, it has to come from a place of passion. It has to be from someone with sterner stuff, doing well to do good. But the truth is that in recent times, especially, the lines tend to be a little blurred because the world has moved to a place where what is called the triple bottom line, profit, people, and the planet, is more than just an altruistic kind of aspiration. It is what defines your competitive advantage. In other words, it's not just tourism, it's environmentally friendly tourism, you know? The whole Fair Trade International movement as well has redefined the way in which we define competitiveness in a global space. And increasingly, the sophisticated customer will make purchasing decisions based on their knowledge of the producer's triple bottom line practices. So the CSR is no longer something that you do from profits per se, from your free time or out of the goodness of your heart type of thing, or to give back, quote unquote. It is really what you do to survive. So the lines itself have blurred. So to establish a business that is primarily intent is to do good is a different thing completely. It has to come from a different place and it has to be a calling. In fact, social enterprises have to embrace and operate with a quadruple bottom line. And I know Knife is a huge advocate where this is concerned, where the fourth factor is driven not only from the motivation of the business and the business owner, but also transcends to a humanistic kind of value and beyond by factoring things like spirituality, factoring things like ethics, factoring things like culture and passion. The fourth factor is purpose, is the why in doing business. So the what may be profits and the how is the protection of the planet and the people, but the why is where the social entrepreneur comes from. And I say this in particular because many individuals start businesses with a social intent, some genuinely, others for the kind of factor, others to solicit donations from investors. Many, however, morph into for-profit operations soon thereafter, some because it has never really been their true intention to be a SE. Others because, you know, the profit kind of sweet, and others just realize how difficult it is. So to be a social enterprise, and these are some of the things that we are going to discuss this afternoon. In order to do this and to be a social enterprise sustainably, one has to understand a few things. Firstly, that enterprise is fundamental. You will not be able to do good consistently without a business model which allows you to do well sustainably. Secondly, that there are new paradigms defining sustainability models for social enterprises. And we're going to examine some of those this afternoon. We'll talk about impact investment. We'll discuss the differences between a donor and an investor, my pet peeve, but I'll come back to that. We'll look at establishing appropriate supportive legislative environment to support the growth of social enterprises. And we'll look at the solutions that have come on the table primarily through the JSSE. Thirdly, that the premium on accountability is even higher for a social enterprise than for a for-profit business. For a for-profit business, really, your shareholders are your premium for accountability, unless you're publicly listed. As such, the accountability framework for a social enterprise in practice and in theory has to be superior to that for-profit businesses. How do you define impact? It has to be measurable. It has to be verifiable. It has to be authentic. It has to be valid. It has to be relevant. it has to be relevant. And one of our presenters this afternoon will delve into that some more. Fourthly, the leadership that you have to employ, being a social enterprise, has to be superior. And this part is little spoken about, because to create a tribe, a community around you that coalesce around altruistic and intent is not easy, it's difficult. So as Buju says, it's not an easy road. Many see the glamour and the glitter and think it's a better rose. It's not an easy road, right? But the truth is that it is the most rewarding kind of experience that we'll ever have in your life. And this afternoon, we have an exciting panel to kind of extrapolate on some of these theories some of these facts that I just spoke about. We're very excited to have with us all the way from Switzerland, she is now, and she tells me that it is a hot 27 degrees Celsius, whatever, Sue. Sue Stevenson, who is the Director of Strategic Partnership and International Development at Barefoot College, based in India. She works directly with founder Bunker Roy and director Megan Falloon, where her mandate is to develop global strategic partnerships, and to support of the mission of the Barefoot College, particularly in the areas of women-led innovations and education, technology, and healthcare aimed towards sustainable social and economic uplift. So we're so excited to have you share with us this afternoon, and we're looking forward to your insights. So just to share with us some of the journey, and certainly from an international perspective, some of the best practices that you would encourage us to look at. Sue, welcome to Jamaica, where the temperature is nicely 33 degrees, and looking forward to your presentation. Sue, your time.
Harold, thank you so much. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely delighted to be with you in Jamaica this afternoon, and to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what we do at Barefoot College and our experiences, which I hope will help you learn. I think we can say that whether you're a not-for-profit, a for-profit, or a hybrid model, social enterprises tackle critical social issues in new and innovative ways. They're the catalysts for social change. The broad range of solutions they promote focused on the Sustainable Development Goals long before the United Nations came up with the Sustainable Development Goals in September 2015. In the same month, McKinsey issued a report on gender parity. It stated that if the world could reach gender parity, utilizing our least used resource, women, then world GDP could increase by 26%. That's more than the GDP of the United States and China put together. Thirdly, I'd just like to mention that the latest global figures on access to energy show that there are still 800 million people in the world who don't have access to electricity, most of these in poor, rural, last-mile communities. So, Barefoot College, we're a hybrid social enterprise, and we were founded in 1972. So we've been around for nearly 50 years. Our flagship program is based on women-led access to energy in poor rural communities. And as I think I'll demonstrate in a moment, it is a multifaceted, holistic education system. We teach women to be solar engineers, educators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And they're the catalyst for social and environmental and economic uplift within their communities, where everyone in that community benefits, whether you're a man, a woman, or a child. Our model is quite a simple one. We work in partnership with poor, rural, off-grid communities in some of the most remote areas of the world. In partnership with that community, we agree to take a couple of their women, the grandmas, and in our case, these are often the 30 to 55-year-olds, and yes, you did hear me correctly, many of these girls are married off when they're 12 years old. And we take them to the Barefoot College, where we train them to be solar engineers. They're also often illiterate and semi-literate. Again, not because they're unintelligent, but because they haven't had the same opportunities that you and I have had. And this is an opportunity they grasp with both hands. We use color coding and pictures so everyone communicates, and you would be amazed how these women communicate with each other. You know, you'll have 40 or 50 women in a room with perhaps 10 or 15 languages between them, and they communicate fantastically. It's unbelievable. I would love to invite you to come and see. So these women learn to install, build, and maintain solar systems. But at the same time, we think we can do more with them. So what we also do is to work with them on their aspirations so they can have hopes, they can have dreams, on their confidence as well as their competencies. So we have a parallel program called Enrich, which they go through at the same time. And basically that covers financial inclusion. So remembering that these women don't own anything. So how do they get access to a bank account? How do they get access to microfinance? Digital inclusion. We put a tablet in their hands as soon as they arrive at the college. Again, color-coded pictures. So for those who can't read and write very well, it's not a problem. We work with them on women's health, especially reproductive health, because again, until you can understand how your body actually works, how can you be in control of other things as well? We work with them on micro-enterprise skills. So for instance, if your product is, for instance, honey, what's your price point? How do you access your market, etc., etc. We work with them on civil rights and human rights, civil society, and environmental sustainability. And most importantly of all, we work with them on livelihoods in the parts of the world where they live. Now, these tend to be quite simple things. I mean, I'll take a couple of examples quickly. So for instance, beekeeping in East Africa, from which we obviously get honey, cosmetic products, and we've been working on reusable food wraps as well from honey. We work with them on coffee, and I guess they're in Jamaica, you know that very, very well. Guatemala and India are the two main places that we've done that to date. Coconut products, we're in 14 of the island states in the Pacific Islands. So we work with them on developing products from the local things that are available to them. And another one that we've recently picked up, which is really interesting, and I'm going to be delighted when we see, and you'll have to look at our website when we actually come up with it. They farm pearls in some of the Pacific Islands, and we actually have a donor who is in the jewelry business who wants to use these pearls with single source gold from some of the mines in Latin America to make jewelry, which will be sold to the advantage of these women. So these are the sort of things that we try to look at. So what is our impact? Well, the women go back to their communities, they build, install and maintain the solar equipment, as I told you, so they have their solar platform. Now, on top of that, if you think about what this provides that community with, and I'll mention a little bit about our monitoring and evaluation system that we have. So we can measure all of these things. Obviously, they have access to light from when the sun goes down to when the sun comes up again, which is a really big difference. Looking at things like safety, for instance, wild animals, that sort of thing. They have access to water, so they can pump water. They don't need to spend most of the day collecting it. They have better health because they're not breathing in the black smoke from the kerosene. They have better education. Children can work at night, as can adults extend their day. Environmental sustainability. In the parts of the world that we work, empowerment of women and girls is absolutely key. And obviously, the skills to develop livelihoods, all of which leads to the community being able to provide its own social and economic uplift. As I mentioned, we have a cloud-based digital monitoring and evaluation system, which we do at baseline 6, 12, 24 months, so we can actually measure all of these different indicators. Now, interestingly enough, I started off mentioning the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and Barefoot's programs actually address 14 of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But for me, the most important of those goals is number 17, partnership. I believe that to be a successful social enterprise, you need support from your partners. From government, you need the right policies and you need the right legal structures and other support structures. From the private sector, things such as access to funding and resources. From academia, skills, impact studies, case studies, and don't forget the NGOs as well. They're an important part. So this afternoon, I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of this discussion on how best to support and make social enterprises successful. This is really a forward-thinking and ambitious initiative that you have here being led by the Jamaican Development Corporation, and something that I would really love to see held up as an example of best practice and mirrored on the world stage.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. And we have a saying at JBDC that says that once you are part of JBDC, you adopt the last name of JBDC. So now you're Sue JBDC, which means that we are the relative that can come calling for dinner unannounced on a Sunday. So,
and you'd be very welcome.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing. So our next panelist this afternoon, we have Mr. Blake Widmer. Now, Blake is born in West Lafayette, Indiana, USA, and he grew up in a diverse community from which his interest to travel abroad and interact with other cultures was influenced. Blake is the founder of Def Can Coffee, and Def Can he started with his wife in 2015. It's a non-profit venture seeking to engage, equip them, and empower deaf youth to believe in their abilities to dream big and strive. The vision of his enterprise is to ensure an empowered deaf community in society. And I want to invite Blake to share with us this afternoon. Blake, thank you for being here. Your time.
Good afternoon, Harold, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you this afternoon. It's great to see in the poll that there are over 30 operators of social enterprises. To be honest, I did not expect to see so many in this roundtable that were already operating social enterprises. I expected a little bit more of people who are interested in the sector, but it's great to know there's so many of you out there actually doing the work. And so it's my hope that my sharing with you can give you a few tips that you can put into practice that will help you be effective. We are 5 years old. As Harold just said in the introduction, we started 5 years ago. Sue had mentioned the SDGs that were launched in the fall of 2015. And it's true, if you are a social entrepreneur and you are addressing real needs in your community, you will be addressing the 17 SDGs. It's impossible to actually be addressing social issues and not be in alignment with those goals. Those goals are inherent in what's happening in the world. So for us, it's been a growing and learning process over the last 5 years, and we continue to learn and grow. The journey never ends. But Harold said this in his introduction, I thought was really profound. It's the why. Why do we do what we do? Fundamentally for us, what we are starting to do in our business is change how a deaf person views themselves. Most of our deaf youth grow up feeling like, I am deaf, I can't. The world's made in a different way. It doesn't match me, I can't. And that's a mindset that gets put into them throughout society as they're growing up. Our goal is simple. We want to change that deaf can't paradigm. We want to change their mind to believe that they can do anything. Throughout that process, we believe too that we will change how society views them. But to do that, we have to start with the right diagnosis. If you go to the doctor and you have you're not feeling well, and the doctor misdiagnoses you, he's going to give you the wrong treatment. You're not going to get down, and you're going to keep going back to the doctor. So for a deaf person, we have to get down, what is the root issue? What's the real diagnosis? And to be honest, it has nothing to do with the ability to hear or not. It doesn't matter that they can't hear with their ears. There are so many other things they can do and do exceptionally well. So we have to start with that premise that the problem is not the lack of ability to hear. The problem is something deeper than that. It's something in their being and in the society around them. So that's what we have to start with, is changing that. What are some of the things that have worked for us, and that I'm hopeful the principles we've applied can be helpful for you and your enterprise? The first thing it starts with working with the community. Sue talked about this. You can't go into a community that doesn't have a natural resource, such as pearls, and import pearls from somewhere else and make it work in that environment. You have to use an asset, a resource that's already inherent in that community. And we call that asset-based development. If you go into a community and say, what don't you have? And then, okay, let's bring this and give it to you, that's not going to lead to sustainable development. You have to start with the natural resources, both the people's talents and the resources in the environment. Start from that core and build your program from there. The other thing that we strongly encourage, and that has worked for us, is ensuring that your programs are participatory. If you are only bringing and giving the knowledge and information and not allowing that involvement back, what you're going to end up with is a teeter-totter, and you're going to feel that those implementing your program are elevated and those that are getting taught are lowered. You really need equality, and you do that through participation. So for us, how that looks like in our environment, we started without a business. We started without even actually an idea to have a business. Our business started with a field trip, taking deaf youth who have a marred sense of self-identity, who feel that they can't. We took them on a field trip to meet a deaf coffee farmer who lived in rural Jamaica, who was very proud about his coffee farm, had a lot of self-confidence in who he was, and was very eager to teach and share that with his fellow members of the deaf community. Through that field trip, our youth got so excited about what Clark was doing on his farm that they said, we want to learn about coffee. And so as soon as you have somebody, Sue talked about this, 2 hands, grabbing it with 2 hands, you have to understand when you're working with people in a community that have a marred sense of self-identity, they are so hungry. They are so willing to work hard, to learn. They're sponges. And as soon as our youth said, we want to be like Clark, we have a vision of what we want to be like, we had something very raw, but something that had tons of capacity to build up from that base. And so we responded to their desire to learn by providing a little bit of training, a little bit of experimentation. As they did that here at the school locally in Kingston, we had visitors that would come to the school and see them roasting coffee or see them brewing coffee that they were playing around with. And people eventually wanted to buy coffee or buy a drink. And so we started serving those people visiting the school. It was very simple. Through that, other people started asking us to go to events. We started going to events and serving coffee. And people said, wow, this coffee tastes really good. And every time a customer said, wow, this is really good, that built up the confidence in our youth. And their mindset of themselves shifted from feeling pity for themselves because they can't hear to feeling empowerment that they could do anything. And so that's the seed with which DeafCan was planted. It was not anybody's vision. It was not my idea. It was something organic that happened because we were addressing the root issue. And the root issue was more of a emotional, psychological, inner being identity issue that they were struggling with. And through that, we're noticing that Jamaica's perspective is changing as well. So a few things that have been really helpful for us throughout our journey. Sue mentioned you can't do it without partnership. We have had so many phenomenal partners at every step of our journey as we've grown. We've had somebody that's come along at the right time that said, this is great what you're doing. How can we partner with you and help? And so whether that was with somebody initially just giving us an entry into a marketplace to sell our coffee for the first time, or whether that was Digicel Foundation coming along when we had this small little renovated room that we were training in, and they said, no, let's give you a grant to build a professional training center. Whether it was the JN Foundation that came in When we were about 2.5 years old and still like learning, what does it mean to have a business? Their SEBI program partnered with us to give us capacity training. Whether it's Rise Life Management in the European Union or USAID, who gave us matching grants where we could put forward some of the money and get other matching grant on top of it to purchase new equipment that we needed. Throughout that process, we've always had partners because you can't do it alone. You can't have success without welcoming others into your journey with you. Harold also said this at the beginning of the intro. He said that the road is not easy. And so I'd say that's very true. The road is not easy, but the journey itself, the process that you go through, that is the end goal. Don't worry about your destination. Worry about today. Focus on today. What are we learning? How are we growing today? Because that process that happens daily is actually the goal that you want to accomplish. And that's learning and growing for all people that are involved in your enterprise. And for us, the reason why, Harold talked about this too, the fourth thing, you have to be excellent. For us, the reason why training is so important and why developing barista skills is so important is because every time one of our staff members serves a cup of coffee, if that cup of coffee is excellent, is great, every customer will walk away from that experience thinking, wow, deaf can, deaf people really can. But the moment that coffee is not good, all they're going to see is, oh, that was nice, but not really that great. So that's why excellence has to be in everything you do. Whatever community you're working with, make sure that your product and service is excellent because that reflects on your brand and on the community you're working with. So again, to recap, I strongly encourage you to implement an asset-based approach to development, which focuses on the natural talents and resources you have in the community, as opposed to trying to say, what don't you have? Let's bring it and give it to you. And the second thing that's very critical is to be participatory. Don't try to come up with answers. Engage the community. Let them be participating in developing the ideas and owning that process. And through that process, you'll actually achieve your goals. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Blake. Thanks so much. That was really, really powerful. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the questions. And I think it's a beautiful segue into our next panelist, because the last part of what you spoke of in terms of the excellence and always aspiring for that level of quality consistent in your product, in your service offering to your customers, is really a core element in good business operations, good entrepreneurship kind of practices, and it's very important. So we have an excellent segue now into a young lady who is very bright, as she is very enthusiastic about what it is that she does. She's a resident Energizer bunny, but she is the manager for our business advisory services unit. And she has over 11 years of experience. That means she started when she was 11 or so, in strategy and finance, and over 6 years experience in small business development and small business finance. Let me introduce you to, if you don't know her already, and welcome to speak to us, Melissa Bennett. Melissa, your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you to the panelists and participants. Welcome to JBDC's session on social enterprise impacting the MSME sector. I am very excited about today's session. We have, as an organization, been engaging with MSMEs, and majority of them talk about their OKR. And you might be wondering, what am I talking about? So I remembered an entrepreneur came to us once, and he sent me a video to say, watch this. So I watched it and I'm like, okay, is he saying I'm not helping based on the video he sent? But the video was about how can I link his why to his operation? What will I do as an organization to move him forward, to contribute not just to his bottom line, but to the country? And I and the rest of the team, I've been sharing it with entrepreneurs throughout, and I've seen where several businesses have a why that is not profit-led. They have a why that is linked to building nation, building businesses that impact lives, their community. And so for us, we are very energized around working with social enterprises. We have worked with the SEBI project in the past, and we have, even in our pool of Export Max clients now, enterprises that are socially conscious, I would say. But for us, it's now linked to the MSME policy. So it now becomes embedded in our being in terms of how we're going to move forward. I want to go back to the definition because this is where some of the clarity is required in terms of how we support. So as Mr. Davis said earlier, social enterprises are businesses whose mission is to solve social, economic, and environmental problems at the community level and at the national level through effective and ethical business practices with the reinvestment of profits to the social mission. So emphasis on reinvestment of profits to the social mission. So the MSMEs that the majority of the MSMEs that are currently in our database focuses on profit for normal operations, but we have significant amount of MSMEs that are coming in seeking to reinvest their profits into their social cause. And so with the policy pushing this agenda, we have started to engage the stakeholders, the Companies Office of Jamaica, the PIOJ, and the players that are going to be setting up the legislative framework to support it. So when I spoke to Charmaine Brim today from PIOJ, just to make sure that I'm on the right page in terms of the definition, she emphasizes that with the COJ, they focus on companies limited by guarantee without share capital, and companies, those are considered non-profit and not-for-profit, and those that are MSMEs are company limited by guarantee with share capital. Where does the social enterprise fit? Squarely in the middle. What is being proposed is that companies limited by guarantee with share capital will now have an opportunity to raise up to 49% equity investment to support their venture. So we want to emphasize it's not non-profit that we're focusing on. We're focusing on businesses that will, part of their profit will be plowed back into business or plowed back into the mission, as well as supporting the growth, the investors. I want to also point out from the MSME policy, and forgive me, I wanted to put up a presentation, but I'm just going to refer back to it here. So the proposed criteria for social enterprises, according to the policy says enterprise should have a clear social and environmental mission, which is stated in its governing documents. Regardless of its legal form, the governing documents will always require that upon dissolution, the assets of the social enterprises are reinvested into another organization with similar aims and objectives. And as previously said, enterprise should earn more than half of its revenue from trading in goods and services, or on registration demonstrate a clear business model for achieving at least 50% of its revenue from trading within a 3-year timeline. Enterprise should reinvest at least 50% of its profits or surpluses into its social mission. So social enterprises should be constituted and managed in an accountable and transparent way, particularly with regard to the community they serve. This is very important to us, especially that last segment, because that is the same challenge that some of our SMEs face. And so JBDC is already structured to support entrepreneurs in this way. We emphasize, I see shared challenges being strategy, accessing information, market information, accessing support to develop business models, accessing space for operation, accessing marketing and markets, accessing finance. These are all challenges that MSMEs currently face. But so we are already on path to supporting entrepreneurs in these areas. We provide research support, we provide capacity building support in training, counseling, through events such as these, and training such as what you will participate in terms of the grant proposal writing sessions. We have the Things Jamaican store that provides market access, not just to MSMEs, but based on the definition that is being put forward for social enterprises, they can actively participate in this opportunity. We have incubator spaces for MSMEs, and we have a strong financing referrals program. So Sagicor being on the panel today is part of our financing group, as well as other partners in the financing sector. We also work closely with mentors and volunteers that support businesses. This is also available to social enterprises. We have a client engagement process that assesses where a business is at and then designs a program to help close the gaps. So the structures that are required for MSMEs and how they operate is very similar, almost exactly the same for social enterprises. So the model that we exist in supports social enterprises in the very same way that it supports a normal business. We have a network system that includes, such as SBDC network, that includes partners in academia. We have over 7 universities that are in partnership with us now to support MSMEs. And we see where the opportunities spoken about by Sue in terms of how schools and academia can help with research and help with even providing human capital for these social ventures. There are opportunities to engage with JBDC through special projects in terms of how we support the MSME sector, which now has a strong interest in using social entrepreneurship to drive economic growth. And so for us, the emphasis is on bringing the social enterprises in, going through our network of businesses that is in our database and looking at those with the greatest potential to participate in the social enterprise ecosystem and driving that for them. We are building out industry value chains, which I see where social enterprises can actively participate in. There's the Jeffreytown Group. There are several companies already in our database, already participating in the process that we now want to give a more structured framework around social enterprise operations to bring them, push them forward. Going forward, we want to actively prepare clients to access funds from the social exchange, Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, and to also prepare to engage the impact investors that I'm expecting to come shortly after these discussions in terms of to engage the clients that we currently have to access funding in this way. So I think JBDC is positioned. We have the public partnerships and we will be strengthening them through relationship with the PIOJ, the Companies Office of Jamaica, Scatting for information, DBJ for additional funding, JSIF, TAJ. So we are really in a position to drive the social enterprises and to look for where they will contribute to the growth of the country, as well as the growth of the investors in terms of their funding. So I'm very excited, probably too excited for this session. We have a network of business centers that's island-wide. So anyone in the group that wants to engage us, you're a social enterprise, you're not excluded. We want to work with you to design winning models to build businesses and country as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Melissa says she's excited about this thing, but Melissa is excited about everything. That's the truth. She's just an excited girl, but we love her for it. That's the truth. But one thing that Melissa mentioned was in passing was about the impact investor or the social investor, and the difference between an investor, I mentioned it earlier, and a donor. The difference in mindset, the difference in expectations for returns and things of that nature. But one of the critical things that impact investors expect, and also donors, is measurable impact. But how do we measure that? I mentioned that earlier, and I think there's a greater premium placed on accountability, I believe, certainly, for social enterprises because the stakeholder grouping that you speak to is the social good and the communities and so on, more than just your shareholders. And we have somebody on the panel who is, as Ms. V mentioned in her remarks, his life it's in his blood. Social entrepreneurship is in his blood. And he has studied it, and he has actually walked the walk as well. I speak of Dr. Kadamawi Knife, who is a lecturer at the Mona School of Business and Management. He's also a director at the Center of Entrepreneurship, Thinking and Practice at the Faculty of the Social Sciences at UA Mona. His research in entrepreneurship and strategic planning for sustainable development for MSMEs has helped the development of policies, including the revision of the MSME and entrepreneurship policy to include social entrepreneurs in Jamaica. So we're very happy to have him on board, and he's also a huge advocate and support and partner for JBDC. So we're really good, glad about that as well. But a man with enough knowledge is here to share with us this afternoon. Kadamawi, your time, my friend.
Yeah, give thanks, Aral and the team from Miss V. You know, it's a really good session. I listen to a lot of things happening. But I just want to start by saying, I'm going to put up a PowerPoint and share the screen, but I want to start by saying that social entrepreneurship is not necessarily a new concept, you know, in places like Jamaica. It's just new words, you know, because the reality is wherever you find persons who are disenfranchised, people are always on a mission trying to improve their quality of lives. The question is, how would you sustain that kind of activity? And usually it is done through the establishment of some form of enterprise. So all the definitions surrounding social enterprise have those core things, the mission-driven and the idea of sustainability, where Jamaican people kind as being self-reliant and collective security. How can we get people to become independent economically, socially, politically, environmentally, culturally, you know? And because you know that iron sharpened iron, the more persons who are in that state as a collective become stronger and the dynamic become more sustainable. So you check the Jamaican history from pre-emancipation, post-emancipation to today, we always have some kind of structures that mirror those kinds of images. You know, from the Maroon settlements to Marcus Garvey, the model of the UNIA, you know, to how it has transformed into mutual societies, etc. But the everyday, the SUSO, the day for day, all of those are activities that comes from out of a social entrepreneurial mindset. Structuring the businesses is what makes a difference. You could even see this are the state organizations. For example, JBDC operates on a social enterprise business model. You are mission driven, which is to improve the sector itself. And wherever you sell some of your services, but the objective is not to generate profit for profit's sake, but to reinvest and grow. You know, and Ari, you must have been surprised that majority of the participants are females, because the reality is we know that brain without heart can lead to growth, but not development. So you need brain with heart. You know, and the reality is that entrepreneurship is built upon two elements: creativity and innovation. The right side of the brain, which is creative and innovative part. But in times of stress, you know, and crisis, what you need is creativity. So naturally, sisters who tend to be more right-sided are going to be thinking about these kinds of things and these kinds of solutions. And we also know through ecosystems that when a species is in trouble, because it survives through the feminine, that usually comes to the top. So if we're in a crisis situation, we'll see these kinds of things happening. And a lot of them driven by needs entrepreneurship. So we have done all of these things, all of these programs. From some people mentioned them. Digital Foundation, probably the leading organization as a private entity that's spending money. You have the NHT program, which have the social venture program. You have the Commit program. You have all of these programs, millions of dollars being spent. And the question is, how do you really evidence that that money which is being spent, which can be seen as an investment, is generating some positive rate of return on the investment? You know, that is the real question you need to ask. And there are many ways of doing it. What you want is something that actually suits your own reality. I don't know if it is on the screen, or are you seeing my screen now, Aral? Yes?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
So let me go to the first slide. Sorry, let me just stop this one. Sorry. Okay. So I am saying, this is what I'm arguing. You see, the social enterprise, which the sister mentioned, attain the SDGs, generate significant amount of value: social capital, economic value, environmental value. Places like Jamaica in particular that have this global cultural footprint, we must pay attention to cultural value creation as well. How do we sustain our culture, you know, and how do we package and monetize all of those things as well? And so because it's an expenditure, it must have a positive impact on the GDP and the GNP of a country. But we usually don't take into consideration this factor as shown in the Economic and Social Survey of Jamaica, published by Planning Institute of Jamaica. So it measures the value of the benefits in relation to the cost of actually creating that benefit. What is the cost we're talking about? As investment. So a grant should be seen as investment where there's an expected positive rate of return on that investment, but not just in terms of economic value, but in terms of the other elements that you have just mentioned. So what you do is to sum the potential social benefits, but monetize it, sum it, and divide by what is kind of the cost. And in looking at the total benefits, you must recognize that other people are doing work as well. So we'll call that deadweight. What is the valuable work being done by others if you weren't doing your program? There might also be a displacement effect, which means that you might start to implement a program, but it causes the next program to fall off. So we'll take that into account as well. There's a drop off in terms of persons participating. So you don't want to go around thinking that I am the only person, I'm the only organization that is creating this kind of value. A structure already exists. That's why the partnership element is also crucial. What you do now is divided by the kind of inputs, the kind of budget that you have. Let me give you a quick example. If you think about a place like Open Arms, which is up by Windward Road, is a drop-in center. And one of the things that you know about drop-in centers is that it actually provides counseling services for persons who are there. Emotional support is crucial. Now, the budget of Open Arms at one point in time, we did some research, is about $25 million. We get about $4 to $5 million from the state. The cost of counseling one person in the Bellevue Hospital is $1.5 million. They have 80 persons in their organization which you have to counsel for the entire year. That is 80,000 times 1.5 million. That gives you an idea in terms of the market value of their counseling service. But your budget is just 25 million. So when you divide that large amount by that small $25 million, it shows you that for every dollar spent by an Open Arms organization of their budget, this is the rate of return. That's the value of the dollar being generated, which is usually very, very, very high. Hundreds of percent. The reality is in regular organizations, if you were to generate 25% as a rate of return on investment, that would be significantly higher for them. So social enterprises create that kind of value creation, but we need to monetize it. And we are showing here is that if you have a social enterprise and where you have the regular expenditure for aggregate demand, which is consumption, investment, we have that as traditional. When money is injected into a social enterprise, it goes directly into the formal system as well. So it increases what is called the aggregate demand curve, which is shown on the right, because of the expenditure which is done. So it has a direct contribution to the GDP, but we are not advancing those kinds of arguments. So people ask, what then is the value of a social enterprise organization? And it has very clear metrics that we have to follow, using some kind of theory or change. From the inputs, how that is used to finance the activities, how that is used to finance the outputs, which you can monetize at the output level by saying this is the exact cost of providing a particular service. Importantly now, the outcome level, how does this create and add value at the micro level, not just for the individual unit being examined, but things that are attached to it at the micro level. How do you monetize that? Now they become more intangible. So you have to use proxies to do the monetization. For example, if you engage youths who are potentially victims of crimes or becoming criminals, and you engage 30 of them, what you have done is to save the country 1 million times 30 because it costs $1 million to keep a young man in prison. So you look at the cost saving method, you'd have saved Jamaica $30 million because you have engaged those 30 youths. So you can use those kinds of proxies to monetize. And even more crucially now, what are the impacts, which is at the national, at the macro level. So if you start to monetize these things, you will see how significant the work of the social entrepreneur actually is. And there are so many different ways of doing it in terms of what kind of way we are going to monetize these things. And we are going to look at losses that we might have incurred if we didn't have a program, or the cost reduction methods. You see, there are about 8, 9 things right here that we can use. And if we have time, we can go through some of those. But you realize that in providing your good service, you are saving the country while generating value as well. So why is that SRIs are important? It's important because it gives you objectivity. When you're going to offer funding to support organization, there are certain that we ask for. You must have certain tools. we create what is called a governance index that can actually give you a score in terms of your capacity to observe and your governance capacity to observe. We have a social value index that we have also created to show your capacity to generate social value. And you can use those as baseline and as a determinant to say to people, okay, you have the capacity to absorb this funding, so we can give you this program, but we'll do some capacity building as well for you. We want you to have those because having those are preconditions for you to create value. And therefore, if you don't have that and I give you the money, your potential to create a social rate of return on investment will be low. You also need to have other tools in terms of your tracers because you want to map where those persons who are benefiting from your programs are going. And remember, you know, impact takes more than 5 years, which speaks to the policy where the sister mentioned that in looking at the COJ, we're looking at a 3 year for them to show that they're going to be on a trajectory that will allow them to generate 50% of their profits from trade. But be careful of that kind of argument because 3 years for some organization, them just in them startup phase. And impact occurs over 5 to 10 years, over a longer term period. So you want to match it against the business cycle in terms of the expectations. You know, the use of the SROI again will also, apart from providing baseline data, it will give you information to guide the capacity building. Because again, you're going to examine the organization structure to see where they have them strengths and weaknesses, as we mentioned about the asset-based kind of approach. And where there are gaps, we fill out, where there are strengths to try to improve upon. But most importantly, I think that using any form of measurement, SRI or cost benefit analysis, whatever measurement you're going to use, what it does, it gives your supporters evidence to justify why they think that making that kind of social investment makes sense. So while we know that the heart is important, you know, they can show them in terms of money, which is what drives some persons who are investing, that making this investment is a very wise investment and it is sustainable. You know, you can either anticipate, which is forecast, what the SROI would become, or if the person is operating for a period of time, like how DEFCON said they have been for 5 years, we could actually go into the organization, which is something that we're going to do as well, and actually calculate what the rate of return on your investment has actually been for the organization. So they will be able to see that for every dollar spent in your organization, this is the actual value creation from that expenditure into your organization. I think that's where I'm going to stop. All right. Give thanks.
Yeah, man. Are you just sit back and start check out my notepad still?
Here, so you can always get it. Eh?
Yeah, man. Somebody actually asked in the chat if the PowerPoint would be available still.
Yeah, man, the PowerPoint, everything's available, plus things that we don't show are also available.
Great. All right, looking forward to the question and answers still. So a lot of work is being done in this regard. So there is a framework from which we can start and move. Yeah. All right. Our next panelist is from. There I am. Our next panelist is Mr. Howard Smith. Many times I'm seeing, and I hear that you're in about 3 meetings. Is it that you wanted to join us now? And I know you're in Parliament and you're juggling two other things.
When I heard you were going to go to Howard, I was going to just log off and rush down to Parliament. But let me just say a few words.
Yeah, man, please.
Fortunately, I guess as God would have it, I've been listening to the presentation thus far. So I actually feel, I have no guilt in leaving because, quite frankly, I'm really not needed. We're really in good hands, all the participants. And you had some excellent presentations. So let me just thank everybody thus far. I'm very happy that JBDC is continuing the ministry's push in relation to social enterprise. We really believe that, I think Knife said it well, for a very long time, Jamaicans have been involved in social enterprise. And the only thing he never said is especially in rural Jamaica, right? That has been the hallmark of our business model. Like almost everybody who does business in communities in rural Jamaica have a really strong social focus and end up plowing a lot of the profits, not by chance, but by design back into the community. Clearly, long before it was termed social enterprise and long before people recognized that this was a form of business that should be studied, that should be promoted, and that directly aligns with some of the world's missions through the SDGs. So very happily that the world has really put sharp focus on social enterprise, and we believe it is ideal for the Jamaican scenario. So because we believe that as a government, we have to lead in relation to policy and then legislation to provide that framework and that platform for people to formalize their social enterprise. Again, a lot of a lot of the business that's done in Jamaica, a lot of the entrepreneurs are not so called, that are not so featured, that are not so provided for, because we often have them operate in an informal space. So part of our job as the government and part of the drive of JBDC is to formalize these social entrepreneurs, give them these terminologies and allow them to be able to access the capital that they need to really scale up not only their business, but their communities. So we have been doing significant work in that regard, coming from a big step being taken with the updated MSME policy in 2018, with the addition of a chapter that focuses on business models that harness social value creation, right? So it was the first time that in any entrepreneurial policy, any business-minded policy of the government was mentioned being made in a real way of social enterprise, but not only being made, with a vision being put out and with a framework being put in place for us to move the sector forward. So we have a very, very active social enterprise working group that came out of that MSME policy. One of the big pluses of the MSME policy, why I would say we have done so well in terms of moving from policy to implementation, is that the teams that were formed to consult, to give rise to the updated policy, continued to be the teams that we now use as working groups to implement that policy. So the team that deals with social value created through business, which is a joint effort between the PIOJ and MICAF and our private sector partners, has been on a path over these last 2 years to do a number of things. One, as you've heard, to ensure that we have a very robust definition for a social enterprise. Again, because it's so familiar, defining it was critical so that people can really say if they fit or if they don't fit into the social enterprise. Again, through the work that we've been doing with our working group and the stock exchange, as you now know, we now have a platform on the stock exchange for social enterprise. In fact, the ministry, through that working group, has drafted a code of ethics. I think, Harold, you made the point that it is even more critical when you operate a social enterprise, that things like ethics are brought into sharp focus. So we thought it very, very important to have a code of ethics. We've working now on developing an operating criteria, core values, and leading up to the big one, which is now our major outcome, to ensure that we have a legislative framework that somebody can go to the company's office and register an entity as a social enterprise, an entity that's fit for purpose, that you don't have to try jostle around the already things that we have that may not necessarily fit. So I just want to give the assurance that from a government perspective, from a policy perspective, we're taking the social enterprise sector serious. We're trying to drive the growth of the sector. We're really trying to formalize these businesses. And again, if you were to ask me what is really going to help move forward rural Jamaica, it would be simply our social enterprises. And I think nice presentation is something that we need to get and share widely, because oftentimes, especially from a policy perspective, yes, you have the policy, yes, you want to implement, but you also have to convince finance that it is worthy of the resources to drive the implementation. I think that presentation knife in relation to the return on investment is something that we definitely need to share with the Ministry of Finance so that we can get a little bit more resources to accelerate the speed of implementation. So I leave you with a very good team. Clearly, if there are questions, the JBDC team can handle. And anything they can't handle, I'm sure they can handle. And if not, they will ask. Right? So enjoy the rest. I'm going to log out. I'm going to run down to Parliament, but continue and enjoy. Blake, good to see you. All right, cool.
All right, Minister, thank you very
The
much.
best comes from St. Bess. Always.
Well, there you go. You're definitely a minister's friend if you're saying that. All right, thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much. Howard, we're going to go to you because the truth is that access to finance remains a vexed issue for all MSMEs. Access to appropriate finance continues to be an issue for all our SMEs, and in particular for social entrepreneurs who sometimes find it more difficult to show cash return on investment to a traditional financial product. So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but Howard is in fact the manager of the SME business banking for Sagicor, been in banking for over 17 years and so on, and just a great guy. We're going to, little later, you heard Mike mention it, little later, probably next month, we're going to announce some exciting things with Sagicor. But for now, Howard, can you share with us your perspective on all of what we have spoken of so far, and perhaps Sagicor's intent to work with the sector?
All right, so good afternoon. Thanks, Harold. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I think that this discussion and roundtable discussion is really a timely and a necessary one. And of course, Sagicor is happy to be on board with you guys. Both yourself and Melissa would have reiterated that, you know, social enterprises are, you know, those organizations that innovate to solve problems, and they include those non-profit and for-profit ventures that are there, which the returns is really a blend of, you know, social benefit and financial revenues. So some social enterprises can earn a profit that is sufficient to get the business funded by investors. They may provide, you know, goods and services to customers that are willing to pay for these socially beneficial product, you know, like the green energy is one such example. But many, if not most, of the social enterprises cannot fund themselves entirely through sales. The reality is that many do survive through the aid of, you know, government funds, subsidies, and charitable foundations. And the lack of funding opportunities is one of the major disadvantages, you know, of these social enterprises face. Some of the options that are there, albeit, you know, some entities do try to access the angel investors. That's an option. Seed funding firms, venture capital funds, as well as debt financing. But what is key to any sort of entity, anyone operating in the SME space, is record keeping is king. And I can't say it, you know, enough. I know Melissa will agree with me on that. Because it not just provides the owners, you know, information to show how the entity is operating, but it also demonstrates to any sort of investor or anyone that you're looking sort of financing from that the enterprise can generate enough revenues to repay its debt. So really what is truly driving the revenue generation of the enterprise, the financials and proper record keeping will help us to understand that. And anyone that you're approaching to, you know, for funding or loan financing, these are some of the basic things, of course, that your record keeping will show. Ensure that, of course, as a social enterprise, you're tracking all your expenses and your revenues. You pass it through an account, which is, you know, ideal, because there are different options here at Sagicor that even if it is that you may not have the standard financials, audited financials or so forth, we can look at your account history. So things like that, you know, would be ideal, and I would encourage anyone who is in the field already or looking to join the field that this is actually something that you're looking at from the outset, to ensure that at least you have some means to track how it is, you know, that the enterprise is functioning, even if it is for profit or not. I'm happy to hear the experiences and success of DevCan, and of course we want to create more enterprises such as these. the opportunity currently exists for financial institutions such as Sagicor, to be on board, for us to think creatively and provide solutions for the sector, which is what is required and what we're committing to do. And of course, to provide options for anyone who operates and looking to establish a social enterprise. Again, the session is timely and is relevant because as Sagicor here, we are looking for ways, how it is that we can provide different support for all the sectors relating to SME, social enterprise being one of them. And we continue to think innovatively and partner with entities such as JBDC to see how it is that we can come up with solutions that will address the needs of the sector. So that's definitely a commitment from us here at Sagicor Bank. It's one, as I said, it's a very timely discussion because it is something that we see, that's on the growth path, and we here as an institution and any institution actually now have to think, a little bit outside the box. It's not the standard status quo that usually exists where every single business must fit in, this realm. We have to think creatively, and we have been doing that. And I think that's what the commitment here from Sagicor Bank is that we really have to look at each entity to see how they operate. And I truly can't say enough. I mean, the record keeping is essential for any, sort of funding request that you're looking at. And that's something that I would emphasize, as a priority. And there are different grants and different opportunities that, once you speak with your business bank or relationship manager here at Sagicor Bank can recommend to help you and help the business, the enterprise, that is to, to be able to streamline a lot of these things that are needed so that you as an owner understand, what's happening with the enterprise and can just easily go to anyone, whether it be an investor or for some sort of financing to be able to access that. So definitely Sagicor Bank is here as a commitment. We would have started a lot of work in the creative sector, which we started earlier in this year. And of course, we're looking to partner and provide, any sort of solution for the sector and anyone who's interested in here in this. So we're definitely here and ready to participate, Harold.
All right, thank you so much, Howard. And we're recording the session, so just letting you know that your commitment stands.
No problem.
That's fine. Finally, on our panel this afternoon, I have a very good friend of mine for very many years, very distinguished gentleman in terms of his career achievements. So I'm just going to give you the real top level of his career thing, because that would take for the rest of the afternoon when I had a time there. So Professor Innovating, like I said before, distinguished career in the public sector, private sector, higher education. His research and consultancy work spans areas like strategic creative thinking and innovation, transformational leadership, strategic business and organization development, measurement and evaluation, project management and project evaluation, diaspora, strategic engagement and governance, labor and employment relations. And most recently, Professor Ying is the chairman of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, and we want to invite him now to share his thoughts, but mostly to share the innovation that the JSSE has put on the table for us. So, Professor Ying, your time.
Thank you very much, Harold. I'll just come on very briefly, and then I'll ask the person from your team to put my slides up, and I'll speak. So I'll just make a few opening comments, and then I'll come off screen. The first one is that I didn't know that I was asked to give a keynote address, because usually the persons who speak after a minister is the Prime Minister or the Governor General. So you can assume that I'm going to speak in either of those two capacities. The second comment is that when I started studying measurement and statistics in 1972, there were three things that I learned. One is that in God we trust, all others bring data. I hope you remember that. The second thing is that figures don't lie, only liars figure. And the third thing is that if you express measurement in terms of anything but percentage or average, you're very suspect that you don't know what you're talking about. So Dr. Knife, be very careful with all those graphs and those formulas, because nobody's going to believe you. The fourth point I'm going to make is that it's very nice to hear all of the discussion this afternoon, but the stock exchange is where the rubber hits the road, because we are the persons who are going to make all that you've said happen. So now I would like to ask your team to put my slides on. You have given me 8 minutes, and so I'll cover 8 points. So could we have the slides, please? Right, you can see on the slides that I'll be covering 8 things. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Next slide. The team is not following me. Next slide, please. Harold, somehow your team is not following me. Need to get off the presentation outline and get to the next slide.
Neville, I'm the person that's moving the slides and doing a bad job of it. So you have me to blame.
Okay,
let me do that again. Let me do that again. Share screen. So, share. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Here we go.
Oh, you're going forward. You should be going backward. To the beginning. Go back to the first slide. Go back to the first slide. Okay. So the first thing I'll deal with is the establishment of the social stock exchange. Next, I'll deal with the strategic intentions of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. And then what are our value propositions? Next slide, Arl. And I'll speak a little about our growth trajectory, our implementation approach, our funding initiatives to date, and I'll mention a little about a special project, which is the JSC IDB project, and I'll end up with some lessons for attracting finances. So could we go straight to the establishment? All right. In January 2019, we established the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. And that stock exchange, JSSE, focuses on 3 aspects of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, which is people, partnerships, and prosperity. So we heard a lot about people, we heard a lot about partnerships, we will talk a little about prosperity. So those are the 3 planks on which the Social Stock Exchange operates. The next question is, why did we decide to form a Jamaica Social Stock Exchange? The fact is that there are a lot of organizations in Jamaica that are doing good, but what they lack is access to financing. So simply put, our job is to help them to attract funding and professional technical assistance so that the impact that they want to have in the social area can be sustainable. So that's why we launched the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. Now, all of this is embedded in 2 things: our strategic intentions and our value propositions. So the first intention we have for the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange is the sustainability of the social sector organizations. The second thing we want to do is to draw national attention and action to the strategic value of the social sector to the sustainable development of the nation. In sum, what we're saying is that if we don't have a good social sector, we can't achieve sustainable development of Jamaica. Thirdly, we are focusing, as I said before, on people, prosperity, and partnership. And fourthly, we want to draw attention to the impact on the growth and success of the social sector. And lastly, we want to draw attention to the fact that we must have financial inclusion of social enterprises. Next slide, please. What are our value propositions? Now, we have separated these into 4 areas. The first one is national. We want to assist Jamaica to achieve a balance between economic and social development. Second, we want to address our private sector companies. We are going to provide the private sector companies with an opportunity to maximize their corporate social responsibility. The third proposition is to foundations and individuals, both in Jamaica and in the diaspora. What the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange will do is to provide you an opportunity to increase the impact of your contributions to social development in Jamaica. And fourthly, we want to provide opportunities for international development funding institutions to add value to social development in Jamaica. Next slide, please. What is our overall approach? Our overall approach is to grow the social sector by starting with some projects and assist those projects to attract financial and professional technical advice. And we're going to do this in terms of two phases. In phase one, we will develop what is called a Jamaica social investment market. Also in phase one, we will focus on building the institutional capacity of the social sector organization to become social business enterprises. Next, we go to phase two. Next slide, Harold. In phase two, we're going to focus on advocacy. I'm sorry the minister left, because in phase two, what we're going to need is policy and legislation to make everything happen. We're also going to set up in phase two what is called a Jamaica Impact Investment Market. Now that will allow the social enterprises now to attract equity investment by using that market. Most importantly, in the second phase, we'll provide them with the opportunity to list on the junior market. So that, in summary, is the two phases. Next slide. What is our implementation approach? Now, first of all, we didn't want to take on the entire world, so we decided that we would start with 5 projects. And you have heard from one of them already. One of the 5 projects we selected was DEFCAN. And so Blake has told you all about DEFCAN, and so I'll tell you a little more about the others. So DEFCAN is really seeking to have employment for young persons from the deaf community. But we also have another project called Choose Life, and that project is dealing with helping young people to reduce tendencies towards suicide, and also to provide them with counseling so that they can deal with all the problems and stress that they face. The third project is Jamming, and this is one of the projects under the Agency for Inner City Renewal. Now, this is situated in Trenchtown, and as you know, that's a mecca of reggae music. And so what that project is trying to do is to use music and entertainment to create an alternative path for persons at risk in those inner city communities. The next project is Alpha School of Music. Again, they are tackling and providing an alternative pathway for young men at risk. And they're using music and education as the primary vehicles for doing that. And lastly, we have what is called Spring Praise Jamaica. Now, this project is looking at changing values and attitudes in students in secondary schools, and also to teach these students to start to save from early. And that is very important, because the habit of saving, it's very important that we take them to that level. Now, the other thing we're going to do in phase 2 is improve the management skills of the social sector organizations. Now, Howard speaks about things like record keeping. We're going beyond that. We're going into their financial management skills, their leadership skills. Somebody spoke about the importance of leadership, and all the capacities that they'll need to make themselves sustainable. And this we're going to do through partnerships. So as already, I hear the JBDC crying out to say they are a partner. So we're happy to bring you on board, Harold, in that process. So I hear everybody crying out to be partners. There's going to be room for everybody to partner with us in that phase of enhancing the management skills of the SSOs. Thirdly, we'll be dealing with innovations and actions. And one of the innovations will be to create a social exchange platform and to develop the social impact measurement tools. So we're going to lean very heavily on Dr. Knife, who has already been working with us to get the measurement aspects in place and the metrics, because as he has said, that is going to be very important. Next slide, please. So what you need is money. So what have we done so far? We started out in January 2019, and so far we have raised some money. For the listed projects, we have raised over $8 million, nearly $9 million. And inside of that $9 million, we have raised $7.5 million so that DEFCAN is one of the first projects that's fully listed with the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. So Blake can tell you that is fully listed and ready to roll. The other projects have got contributions for the rest of the 1-point-something million. But while we're doing the projects, we have also dealt with some special appeals. So Father Olong came to us when the home for the homeless was burnt down, and so we had a very special appeal for him. Also, when COVID-19 hit us, there are two projects that came to us for help. One is the Mona project, which deals with the repair of ventilators for hospitals across Jamaica. We thought that was a worthwhile project, and so went out and raised funds for that. Also, we had a project called Team Challenge. These were a group of teenagers that were trying to get themselves out of things like drug addiction, and they're doing this through farming, and they're selling their products to places like hotels. But as you know, COVID has hit hotels, so their market went. And so we went out and raised funds, and I'm happy to say that we raised all the money that they were asking for to support them through this COVID crisis. Our next big funding was from the IDB, and the launch for that is actually going to be next week. But the project is already started in June. So despite COVID-19, we're rolling ahead. And so we have $910,000 US to spend. Sorry to tell you, Harold, we're not giving you any of that. But nonetheless, quite seriously, we'll engage you as a partner in the training and development and other aspects of the institutional capacity building. So there's going to be room for you, and we can talk off table about that. We have also had pledges from the diaspora, about $215,000 US. One of the pledges is towards Alpha, and the others are a range of about 149 persons who have pledged small amount. We accept any amount that people offer because we are into the crowdfunding concept in begging. So the good news is that although COVID has operated, we have gone out there and we have raised funds. And so I wanted to give that picture, that we are not sitting by idly, because funding is the most critical aspect for social sector organizations to move forward. Next slide. I want to speak a little about the special project by the IDB. With the $910,000 US, we have created a project called Innovating Social Sector Financing. And this project is going to focus on building the business management skills of the social sector organizations. We're going to teach them how to measure, just like what Dr. Knife says, so he's going to be very involved in that process. And most importantly, we're going to teach them how to communicate their results so that they can attract financial support from donors and from investors to support their social impact work. Next slide. Now, what are the lessons that we have learned over the last year? The first lesson is that you have to demonstrate an excellent reputation and track record of success if you want to attract financing. The second is that you must have a compelling value proposition. And you notice that in the beginning, I started by showing you our 4 value propositions. The next thing is that stay very close to your core business. And fourthly, demonstrate that you have the institutional capacity for sustainable growth. And lastly, you must make sure when you go to a donor or an investor that your goals are aligned with those. So that very briefly is what we're about in the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, and we'll entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Professor. Exciting times, exciting times, exciting times indeed. First of its kind, I believe, is the first such social stock exchange in the Caribbean. Am I correct?
I think probably in the world.
No, it's not quite in the world. I was reading up, but certainly in the Caribbean.
No, definitely in the Caribbean, we are the first.
Yes, yes, yes. And in terms of Latin America, you also have first, because I think Latin America has had what you have termed as a phase 1, but the phase 2. Latin America, definitely, I don't think they've had a model like that in anywhere in Latin America.
But you know, Harold, you see, that kind of discussion we should not have, because you mustn't be surprised. Jamaica has always been the first in a number of things. You know, and my disruptor now, because Jamaicans, that's what they call disruptive models, which is what drives innovation. You know? Yeah, because the reality, so we must be surprised. What we do know is that we never have the kind of support from the mainstream to resource a number of those innovations. In this case now, we have some resources, you know, and what is good about the social stock exchange is that the Jamaican diaspora has always been a population that wanted to invest. But through them don't just government, them don't invest. But the social stock exchange, you know, which have a reputation of accountability and is above government, is a nice partner to engage. You know, so I suspect that a lot of the philanthropic investment from the diaspora will pass the social stock exchange, because it signals your capacity to absorb and utilize, plus the presence of an oversight committee that can ensure that money is used properly.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as you know, I come to the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange from my work with the diaspora. Yeah. And you're quite correct. They were very happy when the stock exchange formed this social stock exchange, because here they had an organization that had a strong reputation. Because at the time when we launched, we were just coming out of being rated as the #1 stock exchange in the world. And I had the pleasure of chairing the Stock Exchange Best Practices Committee, which really was very instrumental in making that happen. And so the diaspora has really come fully on board now, and we have had about 2 sets of meetings with them, and they're really gung-ho about supporting this social stock exchange. So you're quite correct. And so the diaspora, in fact, they're planning some efforts for the Independence Weekend coming up, which you'll hear about, to give some special donations out of their efforts to celebrate Jamaica emancipation and independence.
Yeah.
But that's an additional reminder, Harold, that while we have done this today, 100 years ago, Marcus Garvey established what I call the first transnational social enterprise, in particular the Black Star Line Shipping Company, created a crowdfunding platform with the same idea like a stock exchange, because he was actually selling stocks and shares in the Black Star Line Shipping Company to people who want to be a part of that program. I remember the money that would have come from the shipping company and the Negro Factory Corporation, those would have been used now to finance the social and political and cultural programs of the UNIA. You know, so we have a model over 100 years old which was started, but see, unfortunately, them say Marcus Garvey was a thief, and sent him to prison and says mail fraud, because persons were buying the shares through the mail. Now today we have a crowdfunding platform which is digitized, and we actually hail and celebrate it. You know, I think it reminds us, we can look at the people and start to appreciate their brain more, but also recognize that doing this kind of thing is part of our makeup as Jamaican and Caribbean people. We always have to find a way to get this thing here done. And when the farmer is informal, it is really something that is good to see, you know?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I for real, we have been doing this and doing it for a long time, you know? So, all right. here's what we're going to do now, folks. We're going to open the floor for your participation. It's going to be curated. I'm gonna throw some moot questions in the direction of our panelists in the meantime. But inviting you to get involved and ask questions. How it will. I noticed that the chat room has been very busy. Lots of comments. I like that. I like it. And how we're going to do the question and answer is that we're going to curate it. So Sansia, I believe Sansia is still here. Is it Sansia? Are you?
Yes, I'm still here, Mr. Davis.
Okay, cool. So how it goes is that if you need to ask a question of any of our panelists, there is a feature that you can raise your hand. Which part of the feature there again, Sansia?
It's just below the list of the participants. Just look at I think there are 3 buttons there that you can click on and you'll be able to raise your hand. There are actually 2 hands that are up right now.
Okay. Are there any questions in the chat, Sansa, that we can throw to the panelists in the meantime?
I will have to go back through the chat because as you
cool.
The room was really, really busy.
Yeah.
So,
all right, so you want to take those 2 questions then, Sansa?
Okay, so Suzanne, I'm going to open your mic and you go ahead with your question, please. Can you hear me, Suzanne?
Sansa, you mean Suzanne,
yes.
As in me? Okay. I think my hand slipped, but just because I am here, I'd like to say how inspirational it is to know that when you are doing good, and my pet projects are environmental. And yes, I haven't been paid much in the past, but I'm really thinking that just as everyone here is aware, we all have to make a living, but we have to make it conscientiously, especially where environment is concerned. So my question is really centered around, if I wanted to start a company, I understand from my peers that it is very difficult. Is there anyone on the call who started a company and registered with the companies of Jamaica who can give me an idea of how that would work as a social enterprise?
Any of the panelists want to respond to that in the meantime? Because the truth is that I know that is what the minister and Melissa was talking about, Susan, is that at present.
Probably the best organization to speak on something like that, but we know what happens at the company's office at Jamaica. You have to register as a company limited by guarantee without any shareholders. So that is not a hard process. It does take the 25,000, which is probably the biggest challenge that a lot of the social enterprises might face because they just don't have the 25,000 to do the registration. But the process is not difficult to register a company now in Jamaica. If you're going to try to register the friendly, the cooperative and societies in Jamaica now, that have a lot more challenges because of the different training you have to go through and a number of other elements as well. But general registering is not a problem. People have concerns about the tax payments, our Virgin mentions you must keep your books properly, but you can always show them that it's not about making any profits and things. So they understand that as well in the company's office. I think they are more ahead in terms of their understanding of what is happening than where the legislation actually is. Yes? So you find it very helpful. You won't find much challenges with the office. You shouldn't, really. Yeah. Most of our CDCs are registered like that. And every time we do projects with organizations, they are registered like that. And we are working with more than 300 communities across the island. So they are aware. And the MSME steering committee, they are on it as well. So they are aware of what is happening.
And based on discussions, the legislation is in train for the social enterprise to move from just being a non-profit by guarantee, limited by guarantee without share capital, to limited with share capital to a maximum of 49% for equity investment. So there are legislations in place to give it a more structured approach than what is used now by the company's office, because under the structure knife just explained all your profits has to be plowed back into the social mission. However, what we're pitching for is for social enterprises to have a mix, a blend of a mission, as well as being able to provide return to impact investments going forward. And I also want to point out that there are activities in place to support this policy around an incentive framework that will be securing benefits such as lower interest on loans, tax credits on the social missions, lower GCT and deferrals, reduced taxes on dividend for being dispersed during that period, and lobbying for no corporate tax within that period. So there are things that are being lobbied for that will, as the minister says, they are on board to make it easier to be able to become a social venture by the policy definition.
You know, no, there's something we must be careful of in the movement towards a social enterprise. This is sometimes, I'm not critiquing what was said just now, but sometimes we have the tendency to want to use models and structures that emerge outside of our space. For example, the idea of the 60%, that you must have at least 60% of your revenue being generated from trade, etc., came outside of our space. And we have to recognize that the places where these decisions are coming from, our longer history of the state supporting the social enterprise sector. We are just in the growth phase. Seeing if in the growth phase, that's a more look at the business cycle. Somebody who's in a startup phase that take about 2 years. It doesn't mean they go in the development phase, etc., etc., etc. We do have that kind of mature stage. So we have to be careful how we put time and year constraints on what makes one qualify for or not qualify for. Secondly, we are Jamaican people and we have our own style. So while we can have some standards that are matched internationally, we can have a certain kind of fluidity that supports the development of our organization. I'm going to give you a case now. Many rural communities can establish social enterprise, but ability to scale up might be limited based on space and geography and reach and market. So it might be that they might be making significant returns on their investment, but their revenue will not be enough to support more than 60% of their operations. It might be 30%. Now, what do you put the weight on? So we get implicit in the definition of our kind of mission drift, where we're focusing heavily on the economic value creation. And we're not focusing so much on the social, cultural, and environmental value creation, which is what is at the heart of a social enterprise. So even though you're business, you're mission driven, and therefore your reason for being is to support that kind of mission. So when you say because I not generate 6%, I'm only 30%, I can receive some of the benefits that the people who are at 6% actually can receive. As a matter of fact, it should be different. You should be allocating resources to support these social enterprises so you can transition from micro to small to medium to high growth enterprise. And when you reach the state of a medium enterprise, we can now limit the amount of support that you get because you are supposed to be in a development stage. We can stand by your own, as again, putting a percentage. You know? I know sometimes the decisions are being used to try to keep out some people, because some people who start saying my social enterprise should get an incentive. So I
spoke about that person, you know. No, but Melissa, hold on a second.
Could I make a comment here?
Hold on a second, Melissa. I want to bring in Sue in the conversation because I have a couple of reasons. But yes,
because it's very late over in
in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's past her dinner time. I don't want to keep her beyond her bedtime as well. But seriously, there are two things. One, I think we can agree that the type of infrastructure support for MSMEs, it's a work in progress. Let's put it that way. Generally speaking, right? It's better than it was 5 years ago, but it's not where it ought to be. We agree with that still. So the type of support that you are talking about, so we're on one where that is concerned.
Exactly.
And we're on one in terms of how it is that we utilize we import some of these experiences and definitions as well. But I want Sue, if you can, and I'm hoping, Sue, that you have been following the conversation and in terms of just maybe the Jamaican accent, if you've been understanding what we have been saying. But I wanted to get your perspective, Sue, on in terms of the structure, the ideal structure that has been your experience. I know Barefoot College is in 93 countries, so therefore you will have experienced different jurisdictions. There is different legislations in the various territories and so on. What has worked for you and Barefoot College? And secondly, there is a question directly for you. It says, can you speak to the investment challenges and successes that the Barefoot College has achieved, maybe drawing on some of your experience? So Sue, are you awake?
Great. So yes, no, very happy. And no, I understand you perfectly. Even Nike,
Okay,
who speak very fast and I have to concentrate very hard, but I can't understand what you're saying. So first of all then, ideal structure. I don't know that there is an ideal structure. As Harold said, we're in 93 countries in the world. So we're in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have trained women in Puerto Rico, in Haiti, in Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. I know they're sort of vaguely in your part of the world. We're in 40-odd countries in Africa. We're in India, Southeast Asia, and as I previously mentioned, the Pacific Islands. What we do find is that in all the countries that we're in, we try to do our very best to work with the national government and the local government. That is very important. You know, we advocate, as you would expect, with our model being what it is, for clean energy policy. I know that you have pretty good, and I'm sorry that the minister had to leave. I know you have a pretty good clean energy policy there in Jamaica. So we work closely with the governments, the local governments. We try to work closely with the NGOs and CBOs who are on the ground as well, because they are our eyes and ears in that part of the world. They're the people who know the communities, they know the lie of the land, they know how things work best there. So that is certainly something that we have discovered. And I think that for us, the silver bullet, if you could call it that, is the buy-in of the communities that we work with and the people that we work with. We provide the education and the technology, and they own that, and they use that to improve the lot of their families, their communities, themselves. And so it's the buy-in of the communities to the programs that we are working with, which is absolutely key. And as I think I mentioned earlier, the women are so thirsty for knowledge and education, and everything that we can provide them with, they then go on to find other avenues. They're like thirsty sponges, they can't get enough. So that would be my comment to do with the actual infrastructure piece. On the investment side, I saw the question. So I think I will mention impact investing. We actually have an impact investment loan. We pay 3% per annum on that loan. It's 9 years revolving, renewable every 3 years. And we have used that basically for our operating capital. One of the problems that we face is that often, especially when we're working with governments, so again, this is something to make sure that the minister is aware of, with projects where we have had government financing, they actually want us to provide the project, the equipment, have everything installed and running before they actually give us the money to do it with. So that's obviously rather challenging. So this is where we took the impact loan, and I think we were probably quite one of the early uptakers of an impact loan because it was in 2016.
Okay.
I'll make some comments here, Harold.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks, Sue. Go ahead, Neville.
I think if you follow the growth trajectory that I mentioned, you'll see that there are opportunities through the JSSE to really tackle some of those issues that you're talking about. Because you notice that some of the components, the building blocks that you need to make some of these things happen is exactly what we're going to do. One is
I think it's a wonderful model that you have there.
Yeah, you have to build the institutional capacity, but you also have to do the advocacy at the same time. So what we're inviting, therefore, out of this roundtable discussion is partnerships to have this dialogue. In other words, you have to have partnerships involving the government who is going to formulate the policy and the legislation. You have to have dialogue involving the community-based organizations themselves or the SSOs. And fortunately though, to cut a long story short, on our board of the JSSC, we have members of the task force that's formulating the legislative policy. Charmaine, are you there? If you're there, you can make some comments. And that was strategic to have persons who are actually involved in advising the minister about the legislation. And like Dr. Naif is going to be an important part of our implementation team. And he has, you know, a great deal of knowledge about what will work for like a rural community. Now remember, we're dealing with all of this thing about formalization against the background that we have an economy that's about 51% informal. And that's a very great difficulty when you try to formalize that. And so the point about the models that you use from outside to set the benchmarks are very important. So we have to develop our own local model, which is what the JSSE is trying to do, to come up with a model that is indigenous to Jamaica, that really takes into consideration the peculiarities that we have and the range of social organizations that we have that we want to move forward. So what I'm doing right now is really inviting everyone to partner with us in terms of this dialogue, which is very, very important. We want to learn from Sue as well. I like the idea about the impact investment loan. We'll probably take
that sounds good. That sounds like Sagicor is
yeah. So that's a takeaway that the stock exchange, the JSSE could look like.
Harold, that's all about the stage of development, because if you notice after the ideas Sue presented, the main ones is presented, those persons, businesses are operating with a certain kind of support structure, and therefore they might have the governance structure in place and a capacity to absorb and impact investment. So if you look at our ecosystem, you might find that some of the persons who want to become social enterprises might start with something like a SDC through their LEI program. But as they graduate, they have to come to a JBDC, because they have to come to JBDC now for the product development and all those other components.
Strategic structure.
And you come to a different part of the growth phase. Now, if they have an export strategy, you're going to link them into a JMEA, or you're going to link them into a JAMPRO. So at different points and different stages. But at a particular stage, you might say, okay, you can now take some funding from a DBJ through DBJ voucher program, or there's an impact investment fund. So we'll get signals from different organizations who support these entities along a particular growth path as to when they are ready and where they are in terms of their capacity to absorb. Something I think that Jamaica need to realize more than is that we have the institutions that are out there and working on a structure to come together. What I think though the gap is that we truly only have one minister in the country who I think really understand this social enterprise model. And luckily we have him in a team which is quite green, and we have been places, I know him express and thing, you know. He need more people around him who can support it. And why this is crucial, because social enterprises, unlike traditional enterprises, it endogenizes the growth, means that the process takes place in the areas of the beneficiary, so there is no trickle-down model. So the impact becomes immediate and greater. And that is what explains, if you look at what is called the Social Progress Index with Jamaica, have a good ranking in. It can give explanation why we have a good ranking in the Social Progress Index, but in other things that are strictly economical, we do have a high ranking, because the social sector is doing so much work that supports these indicators and the Social Progress Index, like the education, the healthcare. Our research has shown that in terms of where they focus and concentrate. So build those areas, but it is not accounted for in the traditional economic accounting. You know, so Ask yourself the counterpart question. What if all these programs, despite all the structure that we say we need, despite all the shortcomings, what if those persons were doing what they were doing? What would have been the cost to the Jamaican society? If you want a proxy for that, look at how much is allocated to fight crime and violence.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of these intervention programs keep out the majority of youth, because don't think there's nothing about this in Jamaica. You know? It's a little bit, don't think there's nothing in relation to the population that is out there. So imagine if the 140,000 youths who are unattached, were in a program, and imagine the amount of hundreds of thousands who are attached if they were not in a program. What would have been the situation now in some communities where it is easier to engage in crime and become successful without getting caught than to establish a formal business and have it grow?
For real. I think very good points, everybody, and Neville as well, and Knife as usual. I don't want us, one thing that you said, Neville, about our informality numbers. Yeah, the informality is high. But sometimes, just as a caution still, sometimes we use the informality in matrix as an excuse why we can't strive for formality. You know, and to be honest, for strive in our business, for work and strive, really improve your competitiveness and go on that growth path that Knife just spoke about. Seeing we need to make sure that formality is sexy. You understand? Because it's important. It's very important for us. So we can't speak to any kind of real exponential kind of growth in our businesses at the micro level.
Remember I spoke about the communication issue? That is very key, because to a person we want to move from informal to formal, what you have to demonstrate in that communication is what benefits will I get in that process. And that is what you have to nail down. You see what's happening with the COVID packages? The fact that people have to have TRN and bank account.
Absolutely. It's forcing persons now to be...
Besides, because they can now see, boy, if I don't have that, I can't get the grant. So they see a benefit. So it's the same kind of thing you have to do with the social sector organization.
Absolutely.
And that's where the policy makers now, you know, you have to have almost an education at that level of policymakers. Because remember, you know, you're going to have several persons sitting in that room. You know, you're going to have persons who are socially oriented. You're going to have the finance ministry. You're going to have the, you know, the PIOJ, and all that. And so everybody have to be on the same page.
Yeah, man.
So that's why I'm saying that what we can do is use what the JSSC is doing, and we're willing to work with everybody on this process as to how we get a dialogue going. And you can partner with us, Harold, in terms of, here's what I see. If a JBDC and a JSSC come together and organize like a dialogue around this legislation and policy, just take that as an issue and bring all the different people together to say, what should be the components of this? And how does it address the rural area, that. So can we take that as a kind of takeaway action point that we could look at?
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. All right. Not to cut you. I think we have about 6 hands
okay.
waiting for us.
Is that 3 persons or 6 persons?
6. Never has jokes. Sansia, over to you to free up the hands.
Okay, Richard Lawrence, I'm gonna unmute your mic. Please go ahead when you get that prompt. Go ahead, Richard, with your question.
All right, greetings, everyone. I must say that I am pleasantly surprised by the session, because a few days ago, I was trying to write down my legacy, and I wrote down that for the next 30, 40 years, I want to be a social engineer. That is what I want to do with my life. And some of the information I'm hearing today, I've never heard it before. I think the universe kind of conspired to help me to be in this session. I see a lot of good questions in the chat, so I'm not going to be long. What I want to say, congratulations to JBDC and the other stakeholders here. We need more of this information to get out there. Just a few weeks ago, I heard about the the social stock exchange. And I'm going to be on the social stock exchange. I just registered with the JBDC, and I'm encouraging this information to really reach out there. There's a lot of persons who would want to be involved, but they just don't know. And some persons are doing things and they don't realize that there is help out there, right? So congratulations. I had a question earlier for Dr. Knife about the 50%. How do you think that inhibits persons who want to qualify for assistance?
The thing is, what you're arguing is that to be defined as a social enterprise, you should have at least 50% of the revenue that comes into your organization from trading, which is the operation of the enterprise itself, and not so much from donations and grants. But what we're going to argue though, in our country where you find that it is difficult to access capital for any form of businesses, much less something which is traditional, not a regular form of business, you're going to find that for in the startup and even in the development phase, you'll find that a lot of injection of capital will come from philanthropic activities. It's only when they have now established them businesses and start to produce goods and services and start to get increases in revenue above cost, which they call profit, then you might start to find that they'll be able to do that. But a lot of companies, even a lot of private businesses out there, let me put them quite clearly. For example, industries like the tourism industry in particular. When you look at when we had the Tourism Act gave them so much benefits. You'll be shocked to know how much benefits they received. They paid duty, they didn't pay duty, and anything at all that came into the industry because they were providing incentive to build out that sector. I'm saying you must have a consistent approach and that same kind of strategy when you're encouraging people. Use a kind of phased approach and match it against them growth cycle informed by a JBDC or any institution as against a percentage. Because remember, I know that 50% in a smaller company, in terms of absolute amount, well, in terms of proportion, the 50% might be greater and have a greater impact in a smaller company than what it might actually represent.
Absolutely.
A larger company, you know? So it's just to get the playing field a little bit more leveled. And you might also find that smaller companies have fewer options in terms of which they can actually get support as well because they don't have that kind of social capital. It just means we have to do a little bit more dynamic in terms of how we approach it, but to have some of these metrics. So it wouldn't be a challenge. We have the tools that can use to do these things as well and to assess where organizations are in terms of their value creation status. So you have empirical things that they can use to measure and map and see how they have changed over time as well. So have some of those.
All right, respect. Santia?
We're going to open the floor for Claudette Cameron Stewart. Claudette, please go ahead with your question. Yes, go ahead, Claudette.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This has really been an eye-opener. Blake, I've had your coffee. And Sue, I'm going to check out your organization. I operate from Canada. And I operate, well, I'm part of a team that operates Past Students Association, where our projects are solely and completely educational. So when I hear about this generating income in return on investments and 60%, we don't fit into that category. How do we get loans to help better the educational system for our girls?
May I ask, which school is this?
Merle Grove High, 77 Constant Spring Road.
In Kingston. You know, in a social enterprise model, this is what I'm arguing. The actual enterprise itself do have to be related to the service that you're actually providing, you know. Which means then, if I am providing training to young girls in schools. What I need is not necessarily a business that needs a training to young girls in schools. You know. I can have a farm in St. Elizabeth where I operate as a social enterprise. The thing is, when I make the money from the agriculture, I throw some back into growing the farm and use the rest to support the programs that they're using to support the girls in Kingston. So I want people to realize that the enterprise can be related to the service or not related to the service. The key is what the money is actually used for. So what I will do now with your sisters who are part of your association, using a farming example, because not we come from country, we'll find out amongst us who have the land, where we can get the capital and the equipment and employ somebody to run the business. And even in the country, what they could do now is get some young youth in the rural space who might not be engaged to come on the farm and probably link up with a heart or case to say they can give some of these youth some certification in farming technology as well. I start to expand your program and expand your program. So that is the idea. How do you create an independent and sustainable income stream to finance your core mission, which is to help your sisters?
Correct. I remember, Harold, that I drew an example about Teen Challenge in my presentation as one of the appeal, and that's exactly the model they use. Their social impact is about how they get young girls off drug addiction. But the business is farming.
Exactly.
And so what they use are the sales of the products to the hotels and all that to generate the income that can now finance, whether it's a counseling program or whatever, that they have to do with these teenagers. So that's the kind of thing that Knife is talking about. So that's why we supported that project in the special appeal, because you're not looking at the social aspect to generate the income. You're looking at a business to support the social thing that you're doing.
Absolutely. You know, in a robust social
There's that difference.
In a robust social sector, and that is why the point that systemic is crucial, because if you look at our alumni associations, supporting the social mission. When others do it out of them pocket and run, a dinner or something. But now I say to people in our communities, they say if you have a run communities, they have a fish rise as fundraising, why don't buy a boat and go in fishing as a business? Because I don't know, when you have fish fry, people want fish to eat. You know, so
I run the fish fry like a business. You know, not just run it like a business.
Exactly.
But see, the truth is that formally, my lady, there is what they call a social service organization, and there's a social enterprise. So the social service organization, the difference between it is what Knife and Neville just spoke about. The social enterprise is the enterprise that you use for business, is a business enterprise, and the profits go towards sustaining the business and the social impact. See? So to make it sustainable, to make causes like yours, and by the way, my daughter went to Mergrove, sustainable, right? We have to use a social enterprise model to make it sustainable. Otherwise, every time you're going to try to do good, you're going to have to be begging money or asking for donations or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So I hope I answered the question.
And the beg culture don't really fit into Jamaica, because like when people tell me no, because we feel shame.
But not only that, to the Knife, it's not sustainable.
No.
It's not sustainable. It might work the first time and the second time and the third time. But by the fourth time, you have to find new persons.
You get beaten naturally by parents that go around and beg people things anyway.
Yeah.
Harold,
can I say something here
Harold,
too?
one of the projects that again demonstrate that is Jamming down in Trenchtown. They run a business.
Yeah.
Music studio and all that. But that income is now used to deal with the issues that young people have or the at-risk person. But they actually, first of all, have to run a business, which is their music studio.
Correct.
So that's the thing we're trying to share with you.
Thank you, guys. This little piece that you all just shared, Knife and Harold, it really has opened up another space in my brain. Because
You're not into brain surgery, though, you know.
I go ban Neville from them joke there. Blake, you wanted to make a comment?
It's been getting harder and harder. So
exactly.
we'll do something. Thanks, guys.
Sure, great. Blake, you wanted to make a comment? Did I hear you?
Yeah, briefly, just on there's kind of two main models. Certainly when you're talking about a past alumni association internationally trying to make efforts to support, the income stream that you want to create that's sustainable might very well have to be completely independent from your social mission, which is the girls at the school. But it doesn't have to be that. So there might be other social entrepreneurs out there who want to see their social impact come through the vehicle of their business. And that's what we at DEF can do. Our business is the process in itself is what we use to lift up deaf people and to give them opportunities to growing and expanding their own horizons is through the business itself. So the business itself is the social impact. It is the mission. It's also the funding vehicle that keeps itself going versus something different. So I just want people that are in the chat or listening to understand there are two different fundamental approaches to what we're calling social enterprise. There are some that are core business and the business itself is addressing the social issue. And then there are those that are more of a not-for-profit or a community organization, but they operate a business to feed their mission. So there's kind of two different themes there that I want people just to be able to differentiate in their mind that both models exist. It depends on your situation, which one you employ.
You know, I think something that Blake and all of us have to realize as well, you know, that social enterprise really represents a business model, you know. Yeah. It's a business model. And so, for example, I would argue, as I said before, that when they were creating HART NTA, when they were creating National Housing Trust, when they were creating NHT, they were looking at how can we create state institutions that is going to contribute to the improvement of the quality of lives of Jamaicans. Now the question is, how do we sustain these? And what they did was to create an act to support like a HART NTA and an act to support an NHT, which give them a consistent, lucrative income stream. So you wouldn't have to establish a business to generate that revenue. So I am saying from the 1970s, we created state entities that operated using a social enterprise business model. And so you find many organizations who are not core, as you will argue, as a social enterprise, utilizing the model because that is the model that best suit what their mission is and their target audience. And that's why I'm asking that you see yourself in academia, people like myself would like to put things in some structures because it keeps other people, you know, I make it look like you bright more than anybody else. We must recognize that.
Is that right, Knife?
It is very dynamic and fluid, and don't put too much restrictions outside of trying to capture people who are going to try to take a free ride on a social enterprise model. Because people in Jamaica, in different stages and different sectors, are always trying to do something, not just to improve themselves, but them communities. And you want a way in a space whereby if somebody wants support, they can come to us without even being registered or formal to give them that support. Because if truth be told, many big businesses in Jamaica that are now like Red Stripe, what I learned when I started to make beer, they weren't registered as a company, and they have no business plan. What they knew was love to drink beer. You know? So we don't want to restrict people who have that innate desire to help by saying the model is this or the model is that. Because sometimes they get too much caught in the model. And all these are processes here. There's no destination. You're always, that's why I will say entrepreneurship process. You're always in a process of becoming better and better. And a couple of years from now, the definition of a social enterprise might actually change.
Exactly. All right. Sansia, anybody else in the room, because we're going over time now. Anybody else in with their hand up? I know the chat room buzzing out of control. But,
we have 4 persons with their hands up.
All right, so let's make a pact. After those 4 persons, we're going to wrap.
Okay, Erinsky, you can go ahead with your question. I'm gonna unmute your mic. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi guys. I just want to again give my thanks for this roundtable talk. It's been really informative, and I think it's really been something that's been needed. Blake had said something right before I came on. He was talking about the two different models of social enterprises, and he touched on a little bit of the issue that I had a question with. Well, the thing was that my business teaches Jamaicans how to market themselves on social media and package whatever it is they have to sell for the global market. And it's an education-based business, so we teach people to do these things. Hello?
No, go ahead.
Right, so it's an education-based business, and we teach people. The thing is that you don't need no qualifications of an Instagram profile, and you find that there's an explosion in the industry of people who are just trying to start little businesses on Instagram, and it represents a lot of young people, and a lot of even at-risk people as well. But when I went to try to seek some kind of support from the government, saying, I have this educational program and I'd like to institute it, and I'd like to see something that's more widespread, because I came from North America with this training, and I wanted to bring the training to the Caribbean and to Jamaica to kind of raise the business IQ of the common person, the common young person. I was told that they don't really have anything, they're not really putting no emphasis on education-based projects anymore. So what I'm really interested in finding out is the JSC is trying to allow for enterprises. I'm assuming enterprises like mine, or I assume that mine fit into the category of an enterprise that meets those criteria, to be able to be listed on a special kind of stock exchange to, I guess, access public funding in addition to private investment. What is it that really is going to, what is the difference between me trying to get listed on a social stock exchange from me trying to get listed on a public regular stock exchange? Because the criteria for going public are ridiculous. Like, I don't really see many social enterprises going to be able to meet those criteria. So is there a different set of criteria to be listed on the social stock exchange, or is it going to be easier? It's like the JBDC going to put things in place to kind of help small businesses like my own at least transition to be able to meet the criteria if they're extremely high. Just something like that would, something that I really register for this roundtable talk to kind of understand that.
Okay, cool. Never, you wanna answer that quickly? So it's another forum. It's really another forum still enough.
Very quickly. I would say, and I'm sure some of our staff members are in the audience.
Nora in particular.
Yeah, Nora and Patrice. But what I would say is contact one of them, because that's exactly what the trajectory that I mentioned is about. Which is
contacting the JBDC is kind of hard sometimes. I don't want to call out anybody, but it is been kind of hard.
Well, you have the audience. You have the audience in there, and they can exchange information there. So you can contact us very easily.
Awesome.
But the point I'm making is that pay attention to the trajectory that I mentioned. Because remember, I said we are taking you through a path where it's going to take you about 2 years or so to get to the stage where you attract equity capital. So we have to take you on a path, a journey. And that's what we're going to be starting to do very shortly through the IDB project that I mentioned. So it's a good time.
Website that you listed, if I go and register on there, that is the beginning.
No, but it's really good to have a personal conversation first, before you go on the website. Although you're a web person, I still believe in the personal conversation, and then you get back to the web.
I agree.
So I don't know if Nora is there or Patrice.
Yeah, she probably can put the information in the chat.
Right.
Nora, break. Never say break. Break. Them just got through that a while ago. I mean, they've just went through qualifying to be placed.
That's right.
Stock exchange, they can. So yeah,
that's right. So there's a process, and he's in there. So I just asked my staff members to put in the chat room how they can get. What's your name?
It's Irinsky. Easy.
Lewinsky?
Irinsky.
Oh,
easy.
No, I thought it was, Russian, but anyway.
Yeah, man,
It is Slavic.
All right. Thank you very much, Irinsky.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man. Cool. Respect.
But there's an opportunity for him,
Santia?
Yes, Christina, I'm unmuting your mic. Go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you so much. I also share the same sentiments of gratitude, but I'll get right into my question. So I've been listening, and I think it's possible that I may be the youngest person here, possibly. And so I'm a little bit new. I said possibly, may not, but possibly. I'm a little bit new to the space of social enterprise. I'm more of a with nonprofit work, with pure nonprofit work and advocacy. And that's where I know Dr. Nye from. I am the outgoing guild president of UA. So my concern is the model that I'm using is a social enterprise owned by a foundation. I am not familiar with that model in Jamaica, but I have come across it in my work abroad. What I wanted to know is if there are any, just really quickly, if there are any challenges that I would face in having the social enterprise be owned by a foundation instead of a person, as is usually the case in private sector.
I can answer this.
I can't say no.
Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah. So I would actually disagree with Professor Yang. The answer, in my opinion, is yes. And Judith and I were actually privately dialoguing on the chat during the session about how we are structured, and she had questions about Jamaica Baptist Union. At Def Can Coffee, we are we're a social enterprise, and we are owned and operated by a registered charitable organization. So our foundation has a different name, and it's been established for quite a while in Jamaica and operated primarily bringing in international aid and providing that aid to children's homes, infirmaries, and hospitals. Over time, relationships developed in the deaf community through our efforts with Def Can, as that became apparent to us that had potential to be a viable business. We actually registered Def Can Coffee as a business name that's owned by the proprietor, which is the foundation, the charitable organization. So Def Can is not its own separate entity. It is trading as or doing business as. So your foundation can register a business name and operate that business name as its social enterprise, as long as the aims and objectives of that social enterprise align with the aims and objectives of the registered entity. So that's my short answer. I'd be happy to talk to you offline if you have more questions about that.
I think Mustard Seed also have a similar model, Harold.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Maybe you could exchange maybe email and perhaps continue the conversation with I don't remember your name. I'm sorry.
Christina. Yes, I will.
Christina, please. Thank you so much, Christina. That's a great question. That's a great question. Sansia?
Okay, we have a question from Paul Hibbert. I'm going to unmute you,
Sasha,
Paul.
that's Sansia.
Yes, this is Sasha.
All right, cool. Who is that?
Paul, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How you doing?
Afternoon, great.
Well, I'm coming from a different background from most of you guys, but I had the same question that Mr. Lawrence had. I'm the president of the Bull Bay Football Club. I'm also the vice president of the Bull Bay CDC. I've had interactions with Mr. Knife through the University of the West Indies. They've done some training for us. The question that I'd ask myself is, although I'm in football, it doesn't provide an avenue really for the development or for the upliftment of the community other than sports. I'm trying to find a way to incorporate sports, to incorporate and merge it with business, social, and clean enterprise in an effort to change a whole community. The question I have is there a cap, firstly, on the kind of funding that I would be seeking? Because it seems to me that most of the enterprises that we are having right now really only takes care of a very small demographic. It doesn't take care of a whole community. And what we are trying to do and what we should do, as Dr. Knife said about when NHT was formed, it was formed to take care of a country. Let's cut that down to pieces and look at it at a community level. How can we change a community? Most of the time, you look at the needs of a community, it's employment. It's utilities. Are the utilities available? Are the opportunities available to this community versus that community? I am trying to find a way to, through Bull Bay Football Club, set up a business that will not only support the football, but it will actually change the community. We're trying to see how we can get clean energy incorporated. Every day we have power cuts out here, Harold. You used to live out the east, so you know it.
Still live out there.
We have the problem of water. If the light go, water go away for 3 days. So you have things like wells. How do we incorporate wells in a community that can take care of our community by itself? I live by the beach. The breeze blows me down every day. Why is there not windmills out this side that can specifically generate power for a specific community? You understand? So it's along those lines that I'm thinking, Dr. Knife. How does one, in my position, try to get something like that done? The other thing is unemployment. We have a very big community out here. I have 4.5 acres that has a football field. It has another 3 acres that is available. I want to build a call center or something along those lines that will employ 200 or 300 people that will, in effect, impact the lives of probably 2,000 or 3,000 people. That is the vision that I'm looking at, Mr. Davis, and trying to see how and who do I talk to get something like this done.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm an Eastman as well, as you mentioned, so I know the crisis. And now if you want to take a stab at it.
Okay, because you see, the reality is, what I'm speaking about now is the allocation of funding to support intervention programs. And to date, the program that has allocated the most funding for any one program would have been the Comet 2 program, which the Bull Bay team might have benefited from, but not in the enterprise element, which is a crucial thing that he's saying.
Exactly.
In many of those communities, we had spent about $30 million to build a community resource center, but then I give them $1.5 million to set a business. So when I say get $1.5 million to set a business that is going to sustain a $13 million building, I have to start questioning what was the rationale in terms of what amount is allocated for the business component. And it's a problem that most organizations will face, whether it's an MSME or a social enterprise. And many social enterprises are MSMEs. We don't allocate enough capital for them to establish a meaningful business. That is the point being made, despite the abundance of resources available. So for to give you a quick example, his place in particular, right beside that football field is a pond, a big pond. And when I come out to that space, I'm saying to myself, we should have some non-motorized tourist sports second place on that pond. Use it to raise whatever fish they want to eat. If they eat fish like snapper fish, and people get them, I set up a thing around that. You see, it's just across the space there. And the beach out there can have all kind of non-motorized sports and all kind of fishing events. And the CDC, we need the capital to do this. Now, what happened though, you have to probably look at some other places for funding. So probably have to go to a CDB or an IDB who might be offering bigger funding to community groups for these kind of things. Now, it will raise a question about your own governance and capacity and your
exactly.
Or if you have an organization that guys will hold your hand while you utilize this fund. So our local programs, only the maximum I see getting now from a social enterprise program, probably through digital like a $3 million. JCIP might have a next program coming out. EFJ might support environmental stewardship programs and climate smart agriculture programs, which you can package through a social enterprise and get about a $6 million. But they don't even give out no funding program will give you money to even procure heavy equipment like a backhoe, which might be useful for any community group to have to deal with community infrastructure development. They don't allocate funding for that. So we have to have a different strategy.
The challenge, Paul, we're going to have to move on, but the challenge really, and one of the things that we have been saying for the longest while here at JBDC, you'll find that we say, we don't operate like a government organization, generally speaking, although we are proudly one. But the challenge is that sometimes the resources don't speak to each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't coalesce around strategic visions and missions. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Knife mentioned about 5 or 6 different sources of funds a while ago.
He had actually made a suggestion to me once, and he probably didn't remember. But he actually said to me once that if there's any way we could get all of these people in one room, it's like sharing a pie. We get everybody to buy into a different section of the vision, because the vision
they're not even know says one pie sometimes.
That's the function of the MSME policy, you know. There's the MSME policy, there's an element in it which speaks of where can we get the resources, and Charmaine, they might be aware. And one time we argued that we should create what you call a kind of a stakeholder mapping of the different funding platforms that exist, both locally and internationally, and see where exactly their focus would be. I have private organizations as well. So I know they're working on that.
And map the thing in such a way, coalescing around one strategic vision. And that sometimes is a challenge.
Mr. Davis, when I hear the amount of grant money that goes back to the agencies, that is not utilized in Jamaica, it gives me a headache, because there are so many things that can be done. Can you imagine the football is a central thing? The call center supports the football supports the community, the whole thing tied into one. That is all I think you change your community instead of changing 5 or 6 people, which is great. It is great. You can map the SROI and all those things, but can you imagine if you can put it on a larger scale and attack it community by community? That is how you change your movement.
Let me give you an example of scaling. You know,
I forgot. I almost 4 o'clock. Almost 4 o'clock. And we have one more person to answer. Richard, sorry, Paul, we have to take this conversation off here. Continue this conversation.
I will get in touch with you, Mr. Davis.
All right, cool. Sansa, can we get the 4th person?
Yes, please.
Sansa?
The last person
Sasha.
we're taking a question from is Nora Blake.
Oh, Nora, okay.
Nora, I'm going to unmute you and you go ahead with your question. I'm sorry, Sandra, but we're unable to take another question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nora.
Go ahead. Nora? You're muted back yourself again.
Okay, you hear me now?
There you go.
We're hearing you now, Nora.
Thank you, Cynthia. Congratulations on a good, excellent discussion, roundtable discussion. I actually posted responses, not a question. Yeah, because I saw where information was needed. So I think there might be a slide.
Okay, cool.
I was answering. Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Nora.
you.
Nora, could you tell them that you're from the JSSE?
You just told them for me, Chairman. Professor Nepaying is my chairman. I'm the manager at the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange.
So you're the lady that gentleman need to contact, you know, the one.
Right, so I posted the information, all our email and website contact information.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, guys, listen, thank you so much. We are half an hour over time, but we could have gone for another hours, you know. There's one thing, I said it at the very beginning, there's a similarity between the creative industries and social and the social sector, is that there's that innate passion that we have as Jamaicans about it, you know what I mean? And it's something that touches the core of our being every single time, you know? So it's one, and it also means that it should be one of the easiest things to convert into sustainable monetization as well, and sustainable development as well. So I want to thank all of the panelists in a sincere way. Sue, Stevenson, and I'm sure what time it is now, Sue in Switzerland, but I'm sure the temperature has dropped a little bit as well. Save some dinner for us, and hopefully the next conversation that we'll have will be in Jamaica, or maybe in Switzerland, who knows.
I vote for Geneva.
I'd be very happy to welcome you here anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Blake, thank you so much. Melissa, Knife, Howard, Prof. Ying, thank you so much. And of course, our Honorable Minister who joined us and had to leave. He's actually juggling an important presentation in Parliament as we speak. Thank you so much, Sajikor, Mike. Thank you so much, Marlene Street and Jamaica Stock Exchange for the support. The support team, including our project management and research team and our corporate communications team and our IT team and the JBDC team in general, thank you. You did fabulously well. I believe we'll make the chat available to the participants. I'm not sure, am I speaking out of turn, Sansia? But I think so. I think
And
because
this would like to see the chat as well.
Some real rich information in the chat. The presentations will also be made available to all participants as well. As you know, some of you will be participating in the workshop that follows tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. It promises to be just as exciting, just as enriching as this experience has been. It's a journey, you know. The thing about social enterprises and social sector, generally speaking, is something that I said before speaks to the heart. So therefore, it's a movement we are talking about. It's not just business. It's a movement we are talking about, a movement with intent. And that intent is to affect sustainable change and sustainable development in our country, you know, one community at a time. Thank you very much for participating. It has been a great afternoon, I believe. And let's do it again very, very soon. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Bye.